Okay, so going back to our step-by-steps in presenting new material, you can see how by using something as simple as Jamboard can really ensure that you're doing it. And we're not giving students such a large cognitive overload of information. And we're really ensuring that they're understanding it at every step of the learning process during the lesson. So I'm actually going to go into all these ways now that we can actually use things like Jamboard to do this. So let's have a look. So brainstorming, as I said before, brainstorming is something that's really easy to do on Jamboard. So you can see that I've used the sticky note feature that it has, and this is an example of a lesson that I had where we were looking at positive and negative aspects of using social media. Now, what's interesting about this is it's something that you can use at the beginning of a lesson, and it's something that you can use at the end of the lesson. So if you're introducing a very, very new topic to students, it's really interesting that you can see what their initial thoughts and views are and how that develops at the end of a lesson. So it's something that really, really helps after you've identified the new topic, and it really gets them to understand those as definitions. So we're really breaking those keywords down. We're really breaking the topic down into something that's a lot easier to understand. Another way is something like a graphics organizer. So this is something we might have seen before. Maybe we've made one in Google Classroom. We might have done it on paper, perhaps, and given it to students. And this is another way of doing it. And it's a really fresh take on it, because as I said previously, this is really collaborative and it's in real time. So it's something that they can just go into once they've got the link, they're in. It's something they can work in as a group. It's something that I, as their teacher, can just go in and have a look at what they're doing all in real time. And it doesn't need to take them any more than 10 minutes. Or if you really wanted to make it longer, you could, but it's something that can be really quick and efficient. And it really allows you to see their understanding of the topic in that short step-by-step. So what you can do within a graphics organizer is, as you're teaching the topic, they can be using something like this to actually be jotting things down. So in a lesson specifically, I'll use it while I'm talking for them to use to make notes. So rather than the students just making notes directly into their books or writing it down, and the meaning really gets lost because it's just a scramble of notes that perhaps they might not even go to. I like to do it like this because as I'm talking, they can check their understanding through having it being taught in such a smaller steps, and we really break that subject down. So you can see it in front of you now. I've broken down something like dual cores in a computer into 4 different boxes. One is the definition, one is the characteristics, the third one is examples, and the fourth one is what it's related to. So what maybe it might be connected to, any other parts does it remind them of, things like that. And it really just breaks that one term into 4 separate boxes. So it really, really, really gives them an overview of the entire topic and the entire concept, rather than just giving them one topic and one definition. That might be a bit of an overload to a student. So the third one I'd like to have a look at is digital posters. So this is another way of using Jamboard, and I like to use this during the plenary section of the lesson. So we would have already introduced the topic. We would have already done something like a graphics organizer. But then what I want them to do is, I don't want them to spend ages on something like Google Slides or PowerPoint, with maybe a poster. What I want to do is I want a quick capture of if they can identify what I've talked about or what they've learned during that lesson, and whether they can make quick bullet points on what it is. So this isn't just seeing if they know the basic information, but it really captures what they've grasped or what the initial things that they've remembered of my teaching is during the lesson. So it's something that's really quick, which is why I like Jamboards in the first place, because it's so quick, and it can be used in such a meaningful way during the lesson, and it really does impact the fact that they're able to easily understand the work, because it's being taught in such a broken down, decomposed way. So advantages. So I want to have a quick look at some advantages of using Jamboard in lesson to work towards this Rosenshine's principle. And first of all, I'd like to highlight how remote access is a big thing. So as I said previously, and I've said a few times throughout this video, it can be used remotely and it can be used within lessons, providing you have access to a device. That goes straight on to my second point. It's device friendly. And what I mean by that is that it can be used on not just a computer, but it can be used on a mobile phone. It can be used on a tablet. It can be used on any sort of device electronically, and it doesn't impair the way they're seeing it. For instance, if they were looking at it on a phone. So it's really good for that. It's very device friendly. Also, it's very user friendly. As you saw earlier, the Jamboard is very brief. There's only a few different tools on there, and they're tools that you can really get to grips with quickly. So it doesn't really matter the age of the students. It's something that in 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the beginning of a lesson, you can really just tell them how to use it. They just open the link and straight away they're in. Also, collaboration, something also I've mentioned. It's a really good way to make collaboration easy and manageable. It allows students to work in groups. And as sometimes students might be sitting away from other people, maybe you don't want them to work with the people they normally work with. You might want to pair them with someone else. And it's really good for that, because it doesn't matter where any student's sitting, they can all collaborate on that one document. It's also really good. It can be even used if you really want a silent lesson and they have to communicate directly through the Jamboard. That's another really interesting technique, because they have to communicate. It provides team building, and it really tests their understanding of the topic. Also, it's free, which is arguably one of the best things about it. It's accessible directly on Google. Everybody has access to it. All students can use it wherever they are, and it doesn't cost anything. And you do not also have to download any additional software. And lastly, using Jamboards in different ways provides really engaging lessons for students, because there's so many ways they can be used. It's something that can be made different each lesson. It's really quick, not time consuming, and it's something that students really enjoy using. So where there's advantages, I'm going to have a look at a few disadvantages that definitely you would need to be aware of when using something like this. So, versions. There is no version history, unfortunately. And what I mean by that is, if something is changed on the document, there is no way to go back and see what it was before. So almost like saving something. And normally we can look back and see who's changed it. Unfortunately, there is no version history. So once it's gone, it's gone. That also goes into tracking. It's difficult sometimes to know who has done what. So that's why it's really important that when training your students or telling your students how to use Jamboard, you really ensure that they understand that they need to put their names on it, so that students who are working together in a group, there's not one person doing the majority of the work, and you really get to grips with knowing who has commented and who hasn't. So it's really important that they do that. So also there's no view only mode. So that also means if you make something in Jamboard for students, this ties really into the it being deleted and the version history. There's no way to make it view only. So it can't just be looked at. It is an interactive tool. So unfortunately, there's no way of doing that. But overall, Jamboards are a fantastic way to not only just engage students, but to ensure that big and large tasks are broken up into smaller pieces of information. And we really reduce this cognitive overload that students get when they're given huge amounts of information at once and they're left in a position where they didn't really grasp it, so that leads to them not understanding it completely. It's a really good way of using it. And with a Jamboard, the sky's the limit of the way it can be used. I've showed you in this video 4 ways it can be used, but actually, if you have an idea of what you want to do with it, you can do so. I've previously used it for votes. I've previously used it for drawing tasks. There's so many things that it can be used for. It's a fantastic tool and it can really, really help you within your lessons. So I hope that I've given you a few things and a few tools that can really help with the second Rosenshine's principle of instruction. And it's useful and it's something that you can really embed within your teaching and within your lessons. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.